Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Literature Lovers Night Out. I'm Pamela Klinger-Horn, and on behalf of Valley Bookseller in beautiful Riverside, Stillwater, Minnesota, and Excelsior Bay Books on the shores of Lake Minnetonka in Excelsior, we are thrilled to welcome you to another episode of Literature Lovers Night Out, brought to you on Zoom in the comfort of your own living room. And tonight we are fortunate to be hosting these four incredible authors: Jessica Anya Blau, who is joining us from New York City; Charlotte McConaghy, who's joining us from Australia; Tracy Lang, who is in Oregon; and Leah Weiss from beautiful Virginia. So thank you all. We're so happy. As you're checking in, please go into the chat box and let us know where you are Zooming from. We love to see what cities and states are represented. We're expecting a good sized crowd tonight, so we'll give everybody a couple minutes to get themselves logged in here. Oh, wonderful. My next door neighbor's there, my mother, my friend from high school. Oh, Texas, Minnesota, New Mexico, Nelson County, Virginia. That must be one of your friends. Leah. That's great. Delaware. Good. Oh, New Jersey. One of your friends says, "Hey, Jessica."
From where?
That is Trish and Jelly.
Aw,
Nice.
sweet.
Nice. But we're getting lots of good representation from the entire country. That's wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us, as I said, for this virtual event. Excelsior Bay Books and Valley Bookseller are our host stores tonight. And so we're so thrilled and honored to be partnering with them and bringing you these four incredible women and their novels that they're going to be discussing this evening. As I said, we've got Leah Weiss, Tracy Lang, Jessica Anya Blau, and Charlotte McConaghy on the schedule this evening. Both stores have signed book plates, and remember, October is the new December. If you want to do some holiday shopping, we highly recommend you do it now. Supply chain issues are real, as you've probably seen in the newspaper every day. So shop early. Right now, both stores have stock for all the authors and book plates for all of them. So you can start doing some of your holiday shopping right away, either tonight online, or both stores will be open at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Excelsior Bay Books in Excelsior, Minnesota, and Valley Bookseller in Stillwater. 10 a.m. and booksellers will be standing by and eager to help you. Also, Thanksgiving's coming up. How about this year, instead of putting out place cards, you put wrapped books with everyone's name on them. They know where to sit then, and then after dinner, while everyone's digesting, you can all go and read. Doesn't that sound like a really cozy holiday activity? I think that's the way to go. So stock up tonight. We are going to let Jessica, Charlotte, and Tracy turn off their cameras for now. And I am going to introduce you to the marvelous Leah Weiss. Leah was born in North Carolina and now lives in Virginia. She retired in 2015 after a 24-year career as an executive assistant at an Episcopal school. Her debut novel with Source Books was If the Creek Don't Rise. It was released in August of 2017 and so far has sold over 100,000 copies. Congratulations, Leah.
Thank you.
It was selected as a Library Reads, as an Indie Next, and it was number 5 on the National Indie Picks for winter of 2017 and 2018. It's been nominated for the Southern Book Prize, and it was also a 2018 finalist for both the Library of Virginia's Literary Fiction and People Choice Awards. Leah and I met while she was on tour for If the Creek Don't Rise. I was already a fan of the novel because I love Southern fiction, but after lunch with Leah, I felt like I had made a new dear friend. We had so much fun.
I agree.
And now she's here presenting her second novel, All the Little Hopes. It was released in July of this year, and it's been inspired by her mother's life. If you like good Southern fiction, Leah Weiss is a writer you need to put on your bookshelf. Both of Leah's novels are available in paperback, and we have signed book plates at Valley Bookseller and at Excelsior Bay Books. So let's give our Southern writer, a great big Northern Minnesota welcome. Leah Weiss, welcome to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Pamela. How I wish I was there to give you a hug, of course. I'm thrilled to be here and to sort of open this wonderful group of authors tonight, and I'm just thrilled. I probably have a little different story than the other wonderful women that I'm with tonight, in that I came to writing very late in life. I was probably in my late 50s before I decided to try my hand at writing some memoirs about my mother, Lucy's life. From there, I segued into some short stories, usually using a prompt, little short story contest. I wrote a novel that did not sell. I think that we authors hate to hear that's your practice novel, but I had one of those until the glorious time in 2017 when If the Creek Don't Rise was released. It was based on a short story that won a national contest, and it was a little 3-page story about Sadie Blue. And I decided to do an interesting exercise, and that is to take this little 3-page short story about Sadie Blue and to put it at the beginning and the end of a book, and then create a group of characters in the middle that would both support and possibly harm Sadie along her journey to her own independence. So that was how If the Creek Don't Rise began. It is still going strong. I mean, I just received word recently from Source Books that it is their largest seller this year in its 4th year. And it's not simply 100,000 in sales, it's now over 110,000 in sales, which is pretty wonderful for any debut book, but especially for an author who had her first book come out when she was 70. So I just sort of broke a lot of barriers, probably didn't listen to any common sense, and just decided that I wanted to try my hand at writing based on a lot of little exercises. And I remember I was with Bren McLean, the marvelous author of One Good Mama Bone, shortly after my book came out and her book was released. And Bren asked me what I was working on. And I said, Bren, I just spent years working on this debut novel. I'm not sure I can do it again. And she said, well, aren't you curious as to whether you can write another book? And that really spoke highly to me. And I said, I am curious whether it was a fluke that I wrote a Southern novel that seemed to have grown traction and legs. So what I did was to go back to some of my very early years of writing and gathering information. And I went back to notes that my mother, Lucy, gave me about some of her life. She was one of 15 children raised on a tobacco farm with no running water and no electricity. And I remember beginning my writing, going over and spending afternoons with her, tape recording our conversations, wanting to know more than just the family stories that went around the dining room table. I needed to know more of the particular things. And one of the interesting things that my mother told me was that in 1944, when she was working tobacco market floor, that there were German POWs that were helping. I'm taking my notes home after talking to my mother and transcribing them and putting them in a folder. And when I had heard that conversation that afternoon, I wasn't even sure it was real because I thought Nazis in America. And so some years later, after the novel that did not sell, after the book that did sell, and now I'm taking Bren McLean's wonderful challenge to try to write a second novel, I thought of that wonderful story that my mother told me and the curiosity about a piece of World War II history that I didn't know very much about. And it led me back to my little hometown of Williamston, North Carolina, that did have a camp there with 355 Germans during 1943 to 1946. It was one of 18 camps in the state of North Carolina and one of the 700 camps spread across America during the war, mostly helping with tobacco, peanuts, cotton, and timber, the places where manpower was really in desperate need. And so the research that I began to do uncovered some amazing pieces of story that surprised me. And all the little hopes came out of that little nugget. But it wasn't simply going to be a World War II story about the German POWs, which grew to contain many other World War II stories. We writers have to find the people, the narrators that are going to tell the story. And after much searching, I found two young girls that at the beginning of the book are aged 13. One is Lucy, named after my mother, and the other is Bert, a tomboy, Allie Bert, but loves to be called Bert. And these two girls are raised in this little teeny southern town in eastern North Carolina. And they get into all kinds of trouble, mostly because they are extraordinarily inquisitive. They are friends from the opposite side of the track, literally from the opposite sides of the state. But when they come together, they have an affinity to Nancy Drew, Nancy Drew was born in 1930. And in 1943, when my book opens, she is 13 in the literary age as my little characters. And they, of course, are mesmerized and inspired by Nancy Drew, as I was in the 1950s when I first came to know her. I wanted to be as independent, I wanted to be as brilliant, but mostly I wanted to be as respected by the adult community. And those are the inspiring things that these girls do to follow some curiosities that take place. A man goes missing initially, and then another man goes missing, and they begin putting pieces together that have them think there may be a true mystery in this little sleepy southern town. So Nancy Drew, two young girls coming of age, tied together with the Nazi soldiers, the German POWs in this little community, create an interesting story that is tied together very much so by the power of storytelling and by the joy of books in general. It was a time in our history in those 1940s when either the radio or books were our primary forms of entertainment as well as discussion. And my family, the Brown family in this book, are extraordinarily bright, very inquisitive, very much seekers and constant students, but they love to tell and read out loud these stories every night, the classics, and even invite the community to their storytelling. So you have Nancy Drew as part of the storytelling, and you have a lot of other different components that you'll recognize in the book that are the classics that have stood the test of time. And then you have, of course, these two girls who get into all kinds of trouble, who are joined at the hip as best friends, but who go on an interesting ride through an interesting part of our time's history.
Thank you, Leah. I just loved your two girls.
Thank you.
Wonderful characters. And I also received your newsletter today, and
Yes.
you mentioned some of the classic toys that are in there, like marbles and the Ouija board. And those were such wonderfully nostalgic tidbits. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, thank you so much for that, because when I'm creating setting, when I'm trying to create a scene that feels authentic, it was an easy thing on one hand for me to do because I was familiar with this part of North Carolina and this period of time, although I was some years, I wasn't born until 1947. But I chose to put marbles, for example, in the story because I wanted to have an interesting dichotomy between World War II, the Nazis, all of the things that were happening there on that front. And then there was also the alternate side of Germany, which contained everything from the Brothers Grimm and the Black Forest and the marvelous storytelling to marble making. They were the world-class marble makers. And I don't know about you, but I had my own little string bag of marbles when I was growing up. I don't think I played worth a darn. I'm sure if I had ever played for keeps, I would have lost all of mine. But I love them because they look like jewels. And we can attribute the beauty of marbles to those German glass blowers and glass, artists during that time. So between that and the Ouija board, and of course we had I love the velvet, rabbit, the Velveteen Rabbit. We have lots of classics that when people read this, it's going to feel like coming home because it is a feeling of a wonderful childhood.
It was wonderful. I was not born in the 40s. I'm slightly younger than that, but but many, many wonderful memories for me too, especially as a Nancy Drew fan myself. I'm
Yes,
sure
yes.
lots of our viewers tonight would like to be on your mailing for your newsletter. Can you tell them how they can do that?
Thank you so much for that invitation. You simply go to my website, which is leahweiss.com, and it will extend an invitation to you. I send them out just once a month. They usually are containing interesting information, the research background in the books that I wouldn't be able to tell you otherwise. And we have all kinds of references and little links to take you to things to learn more about things you may not know about. So, but thank you for that invitation, Pamela.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Leah. And if any of our audience members have questions for Leah or the other authors, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A box, and we will take them throughout the program as well as at the end. So thank you so much for that fascinating introduction to all the little hopes, Leah. And we will let you turn off your camera for a few moments, and we will welcome Jessica Anya Blau to the screen. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you for joining us from New York City. Jessica was born in Boston and raised in Southern California, but now she is in New York. So our world traveler here. Her novels have been featured on the Today Show, Good Morning America, CNN and NPR, and in Cosmo, Vanity Fair, In Style, Country Living, Parade, and as an Oprah summer read. Jessica co-wrote the script for Love on the Run, starring Frances Fisher and Steve Howey. She also teaches writing at Johns Hopkins University and the Fashion Institute of Technology. Currently, she is joining us, as I said, from New York, and her newest novel is the fantastic Mary Jane, which quickly became a bookseller favorite at both Excelsior Bay and Valley Bookseller. All the staff has been mad for Mary Jane. It's been flying off the shelves and front tables there. I know that you are also going to fall hard for this protagonist because she is just a delight. She's naive, she's charming, she's lovable, and so is the entire book. So the New York Times said it's delightful. This book works because it's got a great protagonist, big-hearted and retro in its setting and music. This novel has the bouncy rhythm of classic television. Blau is a deft hand with comic juxtaposition and domestic fantasy. She keeps it light, she keeps it moving, and she's got terrific visuals. Blau's story is so clear and bright that you can watch the movie in your mind. And In Style magazine said it was the best book of the summer. We will let you see if you agree. We certainly think it's fantastic. Please welcome Jessica Anya Blau.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And by the way, I love listening to Leah, like what an amazing woman she is. I was so impressed. So Leah, I want to meet you in person. You impressed me so much. So this is Mary Jane. Oh, I'm going to look at what time it is. All right. So I know how much time I have. This is Mary Jane. So this book came to me. Oh, and by the way, I'm not teaching now. I have taught right now. I'm just trying to write. This book came to me. I was at a party and I met a woman who somehow she told me that when she was a teenager, she was a summer nanny for a psychiatrist in a very small town where you would never expect any famous person to ever show up. And that he had taken in for the summer a very famous rock star and a very famous woman who was his partner. And she was the nanny for the psychiatrist's kid. And suddenly this huge, massive rock star and his movie star partner were there in this house where nobody would expect to see them for the summer, living on the third floor. So of course I had just a million questions for her. I mean, I think I cornered her in a table, it was like, what did they eat? And what did they smell like? And what did they wear? And did you look through their clothes when they weren't home? And, what did their teeth look like? I wanted to know everything. And she didn't remember anything. She said, I don't know. I said, well, did you eat dinner with them? And I remember she said, I don't know. I must have. I was there at dinner time. And I was thinking, how could you have this, of course, she's a lovely woman and, she had the experience, but she processed it different than I would have, because I went away from that conversation thinking that would have been my dream summer. I would have given anything to do that for a summer. And I would have been, sort of devouring them in a way. So so anyway, she answered none of my questions. All I had was this setup. And in the meantime, I ghostwrite books sometimes. And so I ghostwrite if you read celebrity memoirs, almost always they are ghostwritten. Sometimes they're not, but almost always they are. So I was ghostwriting when I heard that story, I was ghostwriting for a movie star, and she had a famous husband. And we were, and I never looked at the time, but I'm just going to look now, and hopefully I won't talk too much. Or Pamela, you can just come on and tell me to shut up if I talk too long. So I was ghostwriting for this movie star, and she was lovely and smart and funny. And we spent time in Los Angeles at her house and in New York City, and we were back and forth. And we were, and she'd been a celebrity for years, and her family was famous, and she had so many stories, and they were all just amazing, like just amazing stories about parties and childhood and movie sets and people behaving poorly and people behaving well. And, and I would just write and write and write. And she didn't want to say anything. Like she would tell me these incredible stories, and I'd write the chapter, and she'd be like, oh, I don't want anyone to know about that. Or, oh, I don't know if I want to talk about that. And so, we just kept writing and writing. And then finally she said, let's read all my diaries. So I went to her house in Los Angeles, and she had boxes and boxes and boxes of diaries. And we lined up all the diaries by the year, and we started reading them, and we did dramatic readings of them. And they were unbelievably fascinating, because it was like she had a romance with, it seemed like, every leading man in Hollywood, like, and then she had pictures of them, and, naked pictures of them. And it was like, we're looking at pictures and reading this diary, and, and just movie sets and famous people in the house when she was a kid. And these diaries were just brilliant. And so we were reading these diaries, and I said to her, wow, you should just edit these diaries and publish them. I mean, these diaries are amazing. And then 2 days later, I was fired. And so, of course, I think probably everybody gets fired once in their life, if not twice, but it's humiliating and terrible and horrifying. And I mean, the only thing about getting fired from a ghostwriting job is you can't tell anyone you really have a ghostwriting job. So there's not the public shame of getting fired from a job where you're not a ghost, but it's still like, shameful and humiliating and horrible. And it's just, it's an awful experience. And so I was fired, and I will take teaching jobs by the semester every now and then. And I didn't take any teaching jobs because she was very, she would FaceTime me from bed under the covers with her husband every night. She took a lot of time. So I didn't take any teaching jobs. I had nothing lined up for the next 9 months, or a year. And I thought, oh, I'm going to sit down and write a book, my dream of that summer with the rock star and the movie star hidden in the house. And I sat down, and this is the cover. Like, does it come in backwards? It does on my screen. And I started writing Mary Jane, and it was just this incredible relief to me, because I felt really horrible about being fired, because first of all, you also get close to people when you write with them. So it was like the loss of a friend, job, income, and humiliation and shame. So I took all of those feelings, and I sat down and I started working on Mary Jane, and I entered this world that to me would have been sort of blissful, to be a 14-year-old kid. I mean, I always wanted to be a mother and have kids, and I loved babysitting. So to be a 14-year-old nanny in a house with a rock star and a movie star and lots of music and singing and dancing and all these things. And of course, there's dramatic things that happen and there are troubles. But, the book is about a girl who lives in a very conservative, sheltered family. It's 1975. So there's no internet, there's no cell phones, and there's no, e-television where you find out everything about everyone. So she lives in this very sheltered world in 1975, and she goes down the street and enters this world where everything is different, and her point of view kind of explodes, and she's exposed to great music, or what I think of as great music. In 1975, there was so much great music. There were singer-songwriters and funk and soul, and disco was starting. great music and interesting people in a new world. And for me, it was just this wonderful relief. I wrote a lot of it in COVID, just to enter this world and sort of enter this fantasy of kind of having the world open up and be with these really incredible new people. So it was for me, it was joy writing it, and it felt really good. And I just tried to pour it out, and hopefully you'll read it and like it. But I do appreciate all the support, especially, truly, this is true, from independent bookstores. The independent bookstores have been just amazing with this book, because they're people who read books. When you go to an independent bookstore, the people who help you have actually read all the books and can recommend particular books for particular people. So I do appreciate that, and hope people, when they buy any of our books, will go buy them from the independent booksellers. And I think I don't know, I didn't look at the time, but I think I've said enough. I don't know.
That was fantastic. Gretchen West, who manages Valley Bookseller, wrote in the chat comment that Mary Jane was a joy to read, and she recommends it to people in the store all the time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
It
you.
truly is. You're getting a lot of nice comments over here in the
Oh.
chat box. So
The booksellers really, and librarians, it's like the people who are like right there touching the books, the ones who are handling it, have been so amazingly generous and wonderful. And I just appreciate it so much.
I think so many of us are the age where we grew up in the 70s, and your book really just resonated so beautifully with all of us. Now, do
Aw.
you meet with book clubs, Jessica?
I do. I mean, I have, and on Zoom, I've been showing up. I just appreciate any people who, writing a book is so hard, and it's such a solitary thing. To suddenly be faced with people who actually read it is a really nice thing.
I'm sure, yeah, to have a discussion about your magnificent achievement. We actually have a question from the audience. Mark is wondering about your writing process and your rituals. Would you mind sharing?
Sure. So since I've been writing, I've always had kids. And so I will write anywhere, and I can write in full noise with television on and people talking to me. So I can write and people will talk to me. So I have no sound, space, light, because I've never had an office. I've never had a space to write. So I think part of my writing, part of the thing I've had to do is write. There's something outside the window right now. Sorry, like a motorcycle or something. Is write no matter what the conditions, whenever I can. So I would write when my kids nap. I would write, if I get a pedicure, which is just a pure luxury, I'll take the computer and write. If I have 15 minutes, I will, and I'll just open a document and write, because all that time adds up. And then as far as my process, the way I write is I almost sort of enter a dream state, and I'm seeing a movie in my head. And so when I'm writing, the movie's happening, and I'm just sort of writing down the movie as I see it unfolding before me. So I don't plot ahead. I don't know much. I usually know, like with this one, I knew what the setup was, but I didn't know what was going to happen once she got in that house with the rock star and the movie star. I didn't know what would happen when she met this family, when she walked out of her very conservative, tidy, nice, organized house and walked into the chaos of a house with books and music and a Buddha and a rock star and people not always having all their clothes on. So I just knew that's what would happen, but I didn't know what would happen. So it's almost like I just write forward and just trust that it will just play out in my head, and I'll see it, and I just keep going.
That's wonderful. Now, and as one of the comments was, it is very cinematic as you're reading it. Have there been talk about optioning it for a film?
Yeah, there were. I mean, it was really nice because there were a lot of people who were interested in it, and so I was able to pick the people who I just adored, which was 3,000 pictures at Sony. So Sony optioned it, and I'm writing the screenplay now.
Oh, very exciting. Any idea how many years that's going to take to get it up on the big screen?
Wouldn't it be nice if it was really fast? I mean, my other books have been optioned, but nothing's ever come of them. So knock on wood, or say a prayer, or ask whatever there is. It would be nice to see it actually come forth. But these people at Sony, I mean, they're just amazing, and it's been so nice working with them. And it's nice writing the screenplay. I like being in that space again. Like I was so happy writing this book and working on it. It gave me it just relieved me from so much turmoil that was going on, and it made me so happy. And working on the screenplay also, just to go in that headspace has been really nice for me.
Great. And having you as the screenwriter, I hope then that the screenplay will stay true to your original work.
Yes. I mean, there's things that I'm learning about, certain things that you can, like, I don't want to give anything away in the book, but there's certain thing that Mary Jane thinks about herself that's false. And it's like, how do you convey a thought on a screen without a voiceover, which there is no, what I mean? So there's interesting little problems, but I love problem solving. I love doing the crossword puzzle and, so it's interesting to work through the problems as I translate it.
Well, Sharon is wondering if you played music from the 70s while you were writing this book, and which songs?
Constantly. That was so nice to ask, Sharon. Yeah, if you go to Spotify, I have a playlist up there, and then some readers put up playlists too. But what I did is I would put on Billboard Top 100 songs from 1975, and I would just listen to those it's almost during the whole time I was writing the book, I almost exclusively listened to music from the 70s. And there was just so much. I mean, like Parliament, Commodores, Donna Summer, and then people like Joni Mitchell, and I mean, all these singer-songwriters were also there. I mean, it was just such Leonard Cohen. I mean, there's so many interesting people, that are John Prine and Bonnie Raitt, and so you get, and then people like Glenn Campbell. Like I love Glenn Campbell songs. Like, I mean, Rhinestone Cowboy, I'm happy to sing that. And then there's like people like Captain and Tennille, which doesn't quite hold up the way maybe a Glenn Campbell song does, but I love funk. I think funk made me happiest. And so that the songs I would replay the most would be like Parliament, Up for the Downstroke, or any kind of funk, Sly and the Family Stone. I mean, I love, and I also love to dance. So I would often put on music and dance. I would get up, I'd hear some song that was great, and I'd just like crank it up as high as I could, and then just get up and dance for a while.
Very fun. Can I come over?
Yes, I love dancing.
Tom is wondering if there are certain 70s musicians who resonate more with you now than they did back then.
That I like. It's interesting because there are, because I listened to so much 70s. Like I would say Parliament was a group that I didn't know as well until I started listening. And then I was thinking, how did I miss this? I mean, so there were definitely things that I found where I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then there was stuff I already knew. I mean, mostly the stuff I knew was because my mother would buy records. And so I'd play her records. So these are things I knew, Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and the band, and, and Bonnie Raitt and John Prine. Like this was all my mother. And then other stuff would slip in, but there's definitely some great stuff, like old Boz Scaggs that I had never heard. That was it was really pretty amazing. So yeah, definitely.
On your website, readers can go to your website and see this whole list.
I wish I should have done that. Readers can go to my website, jessicaanyablau.com. But if you go to Spotify, I put up a Mary Jane playlist, and then Spotify did some interview where I talk about a few of my favorite songs. Fleetwood Mac. And so if you go to Spotify, and there's also an interview where we talk about songs.
Great.
But you're right. I should put that on my website. I'm so not.
To add that.
I couldn't even time myself right. I need help.
That's okay. I've got you. You're all set. So we are going to say thank you. If people have questions for Jessica, she will be answering more at the end. So we are going to say thank you and let Jessica turn off her camera for a little while, and I will introduce you to our next author, Tracy Lang.
Hi,
Tracy.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such an honor to have you after we loved your novel so much. One of my favorite things about Literature Lovers Night Out is getting to introduce debut authors to our customers. And tonight we're proud to introduce Tracy Lang. She's a debut novelist, and her novel is We Are the BRENNANS, which was a New York Times bestseller. That is quite the way to start your writing career. Well done. When I first met the BRENNANS, it had been a while since I'd connected so intensely with an entire cast of characters in this great big messy Irish family with all these really big personalities. And I just thought it was fantastic. Tracy has such a gift for creating people so lifelike that they could actually be living next door to you. The Brennan clan has secrets and lies and troubles, but they are loyal to each other to the very end. And I dare you to open this book and not fall in love with this crazy wild family. It's my pleasure to welcome Tracy Lang and the entire Brennan family to Literature Lovers Night Out. Thank you, Tracy. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. I feel so fortunate to be here with this panel tonight. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the book itself and then kind of where it came from for me. And I won't give anything away. Anything I talk about is kind of on the cover of the book or in the first few pages. But We Are the Brennans is about a first generation Irish American family that has put down some pretty deep roots in Westchester, New York. They've got 3 generations of Brennans going there. But the lone female sibling of the 4 siblings is actually living across the country. Her name is Sunday, and 5 years ago, she packed up and left her family and her fiance at the time and headed to LA for a job opportunity, kind of suddenly. And when the story opens, she's still living out there and she gets into a pretty nasty drunk driving accident. At which point her big brother, Danny, decides he better go out and check on her and see what's going on. And ultimately he convinces her to come home for a while and sort of recuperate around family. So there's a nice reunion. They're all excited to sort of be back together again. But before long, her homecoming kicks up some turmoil, pretty much for everyone around her. Her family's got some questions and a little bit of resentment about the way she left 5 years before. The fiance that she abandoned is very present because he's her brother's business partner and he's kind of part of the family. So although he's married to someone else now, he's very much present most of the time. And the longer Sunday is home, the more she realizes that her dad and her brothers probably aren't doing quite as well as she assumed they were. And her oldest brother in particular has gotten into some pretty dire financial straits that he's hiding from everyone, and it could ultimately impact the whole family. So basically all of these secrets start to kind of unravel, and including what drove her away 5 years ago. And really almost everyone in the family is forced to confront some hard truths about themselves and own up to mistakes from the past if they're gonna kind of get through this together. So the story is told through many points of view, mostly family members, although we do get some chapters from 2 people outside the family. And for me, that was just a really nice way to deal with all of the secrets that the various characters are carrying. So it's very much a story about loyalty and kind of the power of shame, but also the power of family and forgiveness. And it certainly was inspired by my own experience growing up in a big Irish Catholic family. I am often asked if this is autobiographical, and it's not. None of the characters or specific events are based on my family. The closest it comes is kind of the patriarch. I did have some fun weaving in bits of my dad's history into Mickey Brennan's story, just coming over from Northern Ireland and working in construction in New York for so many years. Like Mickey Brennan, my dad had a bookie for decades, but that's about where any kind of resemblance, specific resemblance ends. And I do like to mention that my own mother is nothing like the mother in this book. And if you've read it, you'll probably understand why I like to make that distinction and make that clear for her sake. So I did grow up, I just had one brother growing up, but my dad was one of 15. Sounds like kind of like Leah's situation. And my mom was one of 4, and all those aunts and uncles had multiple kids. So at the end of the day, we had over 50 first cousins, and it just felt like we were really surrounded by family. And it was so much fun to be part of that kind of big clan where you felt like you just had this network of people looking out for you, always someone to do something with. And even if it was family, say in Ireland, that we didn't necessarily see that often, you could kind of show up on the doorstep the next day and you'd be welcome and they'd be happy to have you. So there was something really fun and special to me about growing up in that big clan feeling. But as I got a little older, I did begin to understand that there were some things that the older generations didn't really talk about. And I know part of that was kind of the Catholic influence. As close as they were, there was still this need to sort of hide certain family history, mistakes maybe people had made in the past. Back in the day, some very scandalous things like someone who got pregnant out of wedlock by a married man, and someone who married a divorced woman and was sort of shunned by family for a long time, kind of things of that nature that we all talk about now, but for a long time, certainly our grandparents didn't, and even our parents' generation kind of took a while to get there. There was just this sense that there were things we keep to ourselves and certainly keep within the family. And I think that a sense of loyalty comes from that, but it certainly also can create a sense of shame for the people that are involved. So I know all of that played into this story, that whole idea of a family that really cares about each other and would do anything for each other, but at the same time still feels a need to sort of keep secrets and hide their mistakes from each other, and diving into where that comes from and what the possible repercussions are, and also what happens when those secrets start to come out, because they seem to always come out one way or another, even if it takes many, many years. I've actually had a lot of people reach out since reading the book and tell me stories of family secrets imploding thanks to 23andMe. So however it happens, it does seem like those things eventually come out. So yeah, this was a story I was passionate about from the get-go as soon as I landed on it, which was back in 2017. That's when I started this book. Like Leah, I kind of did something else for a long time before this. I was in the behavioral healthcare field, and I worked with families from all walks of life that were facing a whole variety of issues and struggles and diagnoses. And so I have a lot of experience working with families, and a lot of that work did involve writing their stories, essentially. And so I know all of that also kind of feeds what I'm doing now. But it was about 6 years ago that I was able to step away from that work and focus really all my energy on novel writing. And I just kind of jumped in fully and started taking classes and reading every kind of book and blog I could get my hands on. And through that process, I found a 2-year program through Stanford University, an online novel writing program that was fantastic, great experience for me. And that allowed me to really learn about myself as a writer and also get lots of feedback on parts of BRENNANS and work through several drafts. So I got it to a place where I felt like I was ready to try to get it out into the world. And I did go through some of that fun rejection for a little while. That was tough to work through, but fortunately I attended a conference a couple of years ago, And I was lucky enough to catch a few minutes with the woman who eventually became my agent. And I will be forever grateful that she saw the potential there, because it had quite a ways to go. But she helped me really take it to the next level. And then eventually we were so fortunate to have Celadon decide to take it on. It's an amazing team to work with. So that's kind of a quick overview of my, I guess, my path to publication there. But yeah, that's how I got here. And it was just published a couple months ago. So it's been really, really exciting. And I'll turn it back over to you, Pamela.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I know I heard you earlier today, you were speaking on A Mighty Blaze, which has just been such a great service for authors. And you mentioned that you had finally met with a book club in person. And
Yes,
doing a lot of Zoom book clubs. I know you have a great reader's guide on your website for clubs.
yes, I have met with so many book clubs, and that's the cool thing about Zoom. I've met people, book clubs and booksellers from all over the country. So that's been so exciting. But I did just last week get to go to an in-person book club here in Bend where I live. And it was so much fun just to sort of be in the room, and there was a lot of energy and lots of laughs, a big group of people. So it was a great time. You know, all my other events have been virtual. So I do look forward to the time when we can get out there a little bit more and have some more fun like that. But I'm so appreciative for the Zoom events and getting to meet people from all over.
It is a great way to connect. And I've been able to have authors that perhaps I wouldn't otherwise have been able to get to come to Minnesota. So that's been a treat.
Right.
We've got a couple questions for you. First one from Arena is asking if you either did you seek out or avoid contemporary Irish American fiction while you were writing this book?
No, I kind of eat that up as much as I can. I feel like it just kind of fuels me. So yeah, I didn't avoid any of it. I love it.
Have you read Mary Beth Keane's book?
Yes.
Again, yes. Isn't that wonderful?
Wonderful. Yeah, I read that when I was working on a draft number whatever of my own, but fantastic book. Yes, I loved it.
While I was reading yours, I'm like, oh, these would be great to put together for a book club discussion. So
yeah, I appreciate that. I just thought her book was fantastic. Yeah.
And then Robin is wondering if you've got a project you're working on now.
I do. I'm pretty deep into my next one. I'm about to kind of jump into the next draft, but I'm feeling like we're getting there. And I would just say that I'm kind of diving into another messy, fun, dysfunctional family, but dysfunctional in very different ways from the Brennans. So that's what I'm working on.
Happy, boring families. Yeah.
I know.
Well, thank you. We are going to take a few more questions from all the authors at the end, but right now we are going to bid a short farewell to Tracy and turn the camera over to Charlotte. Okay. Thank you, Tracy.
Hey.
Hello, Charlotte. Welcome. Charlotte is joining us this evening or this morning where she is in Sydney, Australia. We're so fortunate to have her. I'm sure many of you know her name as the author of the beloved national bestseller, Migrations. It was the #1 Indie Next pick and Amazon's best novel of 2020. Migrations has been translated now into over 20 languages and adapted for film. This past August, Charlotte published Once There Were Wolves, about a biologist charged with reintroducing wolves into the Scottish Highlands to rewild the landscape and bring a forest back to life. In addition to producing novels and films, Charlotte had her biggest production of all this year, a brand new baby who arrived just about the time of her new book. So we are thrilled to have her here as she is immersed in new motherhood and her brand new novel. Congratulations to you on all fronts, Charlotte. So here to tell you all about her life and work and migrations and the wolves is the author herself, Charlotte McConaghy. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you so much for having me on your program tonight. It's such a pleasure to be wrapping up this event with three such wonderful authors. As you mentioned, I'll talk a little bit about both my books, Migrations and Once There Were Wolves, just in case people are interested in either. I've been writing for a long time. I started my first book when I was 14. And I've always, I guess, had a bit of a rule that I write the book that I want to read. So that's, in that way, I started off writing several epic fantasy series for kids because that's what I loved. I published 8 of them in Australia. And then I did 2 degrees in screenwriting, which were actually really amazing for my prose writing and just, I guess, story craft in general. And at that point, my writing started to kind of shift. I was pulled in a new direction. Migrations and Wolves are my first adult fiction novels, and they're very different to my earlier stuff in a lot of ways. The main one being, I think, that when I was younger, I wrote to escape and to have adventures without, leaving the safety of my bedroom. And while I definitely still do that now to some extent, I think I also write because I can't look away from what's happening in the world around me. So Migrations is the story of Franny Stone, an Irish-Australian ornithologist, another Irish character, who decides to follow what could possibly be the last migration of the Arctic tern, which is the bird with the longest migration of any animal in the world. It flies from the Arctic all the way down to the Antarctic. And she wants to follow this bird because she... the novel's set a stone's throw in the very near future during the peak of our extinction crisis, when all the animals in the world really are either critically endangered or extinct. And the novel opens with the line, "The animals are dying, soon we will be alone here." And that's really what this book is exploring, the idea of what it will feel like, both existentially and very intimately, for us to lose the beautiful living creatures that we share this planet with, and how desperately lonely that will be. So in that way, it does look at climate change. And it's funny, I guess, because the book often gets labeled as cli-fi, but I didn't ever set out to write a book about climate change. I wanted to write about our connection to nature and its healing power over us. And I just found that I couldn't really do that these days without also acknowledging our impact on nature. And the sad truth of the book is that we're not that far away from the future it depicts. And I think it's very easy to become apathetic about that fact, because in a way that's a survival tool for us. It's sort of too awful to face the truth. But I think that in facing this truth, in looking at it directly, in discussing it, bringing it into the forefront of our awareness, we can galvanize each other. This book, more than anything, is about hope. Franny, the main character, is like a wild animal herself in a lot of ways. She's migratory like the birds she loves, which means she's always on the move, and this makes it hard for her to sustain relationships. So we learn about the love story between her and her husband, and how heartbreaking it is for her to be the kind of creature who is able to love but unable to stay. It's a very romantic book, because I'm such a romantic at heart, and also because I think there's undeniable romance in epic sea voyages and loss and the end of the world and courageous animals that are the last of their kind. The book also has elements of mystery, and we get given kind of hints as we go along about the dark secrets in Franny's past that have led her to take on this journey. And ultimately, it is a book about this journey to find redemption and to rediscover the hope she's lost. It embraces that idea of tragic, enormous loss, but I hope that it also shines a light on all the beauty and wonder and joy that still remains in this world and that we have to fight for. I hope that it energizes people to take up that fight. Which kind of leads me into Once There Were Wolves, which is a story that picks up on some of those same environmental themes, the idea of nature's healing power, our complex relationship to the natural world, and our responsibility to protect it. Inti Flynn is a field biologist who moves to the Scottish Highlands to take on a rewilding project. She's reintroducing 14 grey wolves in order to bring that landscape back to life. Wolves have an incredible power over their environments. I mean, I wasn't even aware of this before I started this book. I've always kind of loved wolves just in a fairy tale sense because they're so beautiful, but I didn't realize that they have unbelievable power. They're a keystone species. So just by hunting the deer population and keeping it in check, they kind of can allow the plants and the trees to grow and regenerate, which affects all the other animals, the insects, the birds, even the water table. And that's why we say that wolves have the power to change the course of rivers and grow forests. Inti's also there hoping that her escape to the remote land will heal her twin sister, who's been kind of badly damaged by a tragic secret in their past. But she's facing a lot of pushback from the locals, who are mostly a farming community and who are, you know, understandably frightened of what the wolves will do to their way of life. And that's when a dead body shows up. And Inti kind of knows that the wolves are going to be blamed. So she makes a very reckless decision to save them. She buries the body. I hope that's not a spoiler, but anyway, she buries the body and grows determined to figure out who the real killer is. So, you know, of course, it's a bit of a murder mystery, obviously, but it's also another love story. It's a story of sisters and family and what that can mean. It's a story of what it means to rewild, not just landscapes, but ourselves as well. And it is quite a dark book in a lot of ways. I think it's darker than Migrations. That was a novel I wrote from a very lonely place. It was a way for me to reach out and try, I guess, to grasp at connection and intimacy and belonging. It also came from a sad place. I was devastated about all the loss I could see in the world around us. But Wolves was different. I had to dive into darker spaces because it is a look at the violence that humans are capable of inflicting upon each other and on the natural world. And I was a bit scared, to be honest, to go to those places. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if anyone would want me to do it. But I realized as I was writing this book that it was coming from a place not of sadness, but of fury. I was looking around me at the slaughter of animals and at our cruelty and at the violence against women that is a global emergency. And I knew that I needed to embrace that fury and really go there. That if I was brave enough to do that, then readers would be brave enough to go there with me. I think there's something really important in not looking away. So the book looks very closely at the intersection between violence and tenderness. And Inti kind of became a mouthpiece for that fury. She's a firecracker. And it was actually a complete joy to write a character, a woman so fueled by fury. It felt liberating not to worry that people would like her, but just to kind of unleash her and let her be her, be herself. But of course, I also I needed to strive to take Inti and readers out the other side of that fury and into a gentler space, a more tender one. I think that's where the idea of rewilding came back into it. Finding peace within ourselves, peace between us and nature, taking on that generosity and compassion that we see in the natural world. Before I got to that space, though, when I was in the thick of it, I had these two issues that I was becoming really fixated on. It was, as I've said, it was the killing of wolves, despite their essential natures and their gentleness, their shyness, and male violence towards women. But I didn't really know how the two things kind of fit into the one story. And I couldn't kind of make sense of either of them until I realized that fundamentally it all boils down to empathy and lack of empathy. So that's what the book became about at its essence. And I do realize that this is sounding very, very dark, but actually it's not as dark as all that. The book is also about the small kind of sustaining moments of delight that we feel each day. And it's about the beauty that can live in our relationships with each other. The kindness and generosity we're capable of, and the mysteries of animals and you know the love that they can inspire in us. it's been difficult and joyous writing both of these novels. They were they took me to kind of deep, big spaces. They both reflect parts of me and how I see the world. And I really just hope that they offer readers something truthful or moving or meaningful. I think that's why we write more than anything. It's to connect. I really hope that we get to do that in person very soon. So I think that's probably enough from me at the moment, Pamela. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Thank you for everyone for tuning in, and it's been such a pleasure listening to the other three amazing authors. Huge thank you to the independent booksellers for their generosity as well.
Well, you don't get to be a #1 bestseller by writing a boring book. So I can assure everyone that your books are far from boring. I thought Wolves in many ways read like a thriller. I mean, I had my heart in my throat so many times wondering what was going to happen. Is it going to be okay? Who did this? And mysterious elements, and you've just really woven them all together so beautifully in this. And of course, the reintroduction of wolves and how they can change the environment is just fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Have you watched that time-released video of what happened to, I believe it's Yellowstone, when they reintroduced the
Yeah.
wolf? Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it's incredible. It's so beautiful. It's just such a great inspiration for the rest of the world.
Yeah, I hope people will Google that afterwards because it's just so
Yeah.
fascinating. So
Mm.
I did put links in the chat box for both of Charlotte's novels, Once There Were Wolves and Migrations. They're both available at Valley Bookseller and Excelsior Bay Books with signed book plates all the way from Australia. So take advantage of those while we still have them. So that's pretty exciting. If you have any more questions for Charlotte or any of the other authors, we would love to hear from you. Wondering, somebody earlier had asked whether you like to read fiction or nonfiction while you're writing. What's your preference, Charlotte?
Oh, sorry. Both, definitely both. Yeah, I think because obviously my stuff has a lot of research that goes into it, and I kind of, I love to immerse myself in that side of things before I start writing, because I keep choosing these topics that I know nothing about. I'm just making it really hard for myself. So I definitely need to kind of read a lot of nonfiction to begin with, but then it's really important for me to read beautiful fiction that inspires me and gets me into the right sort of mood. And I love getting a bit melancholy when I sit down to write.
Have you found
It
something
can-
that really resonated with you recently that you'd like to recommend?
Well, I mean, I always kind of return to the poetry of Mary Oliver. She's such an inspiration for me. I found, with a lot of my stuff, it is about what the little moments of life and nature can kind of provide for us, and how they can shed insight into our relationships with each other. And she writes about that really beautifully. So oftentimes when I would get lost in my kind of writing, I would read her stuff and sort of remember the power of words, really, and how they can kind of move us.
Beautiful. Tom is wondering, he said he noticed towards the end of Migrations, Franny asks, have you ever been to Scotland? Was that a clue towards the subject matter of wolves?
Actually, no, but it's good. I quite like that. I kind of retrofit that now. But it's actually because in the book, in Migrations, the nature reserve where she works with her husband is in Scotland, and so I guess I'm kind of implying that she's going to head back there and get back to work, trying to save the animals. But I do like that kind of is a really nice lead into the next book.
It is. Let's invite the other authors to come back on screen with us. And if anyone in the audience has a question, we would be happy to tackle it. Or if any of the authors have a question for one of their fellow authors. Otherwise, perhaps you can each share what you're currently reading or a book you just recently loved. Tracy, would you like to start?
Sure. I actually just got to read an advanced copy of something, so it's not out yet, but it was wonderful. I think it's out next year. The Truth About Ben and June by Alex Keister. So maybe keep your eyes peeled for that one. It was a great story about modern parenthood and from both sides of a marriage, and some really great stuff there.
That sounds like fun. Jessica, how about you?
I'm actually reading Great Expectations because I never read it before. And it's hilarious. It's great. But I did notice I was looking through the comments, one of my favorite writers, Irina Wren, commented, and I love her book. What about Anna Kay and Imperial Wife?
Oh,
So
yes.
somehow she's there watching all these amazing writers, and I love her books.
Great.
And also I was so impressed by everyone, and I am placing a big order tonight.
Thank you. We love it when the authors all buy each other's books too.
Yes.
Leah, what can you recommend for the group tonight?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Ashley Bloom's, and Sourcebook sent me her latest book, which is Where I Can't Follow. Ashley is a young author who wrote Every Bone a Prayer, and I was truly enchanted by this other world that she created, and I am enjoying this. So when I was waiting for our time to pop up here, I said, well, let me have my book here and enjoy reading it. So I highly recommend Ashley Bloom's work.
Great, great. And Charlotte, how about you?
Well, two that I really have enjoyed this year. 1, 2, 3 by Laurie Frankel, and I
That
read
has
an
an environmental aspect to it as well.
Yeah, it's got that element to it. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's so warm and funny and generous. It's a lovely read. And I also really enjoyed an advanced copy of Yerba Buena by Nina Lacour. That's her first adult novel, and it's also, I think the ones that are sticking with me this year are really warm and loving and kind of sweet. They offer something just gentle and lovely to kind of get swept away in. So I can highly recommend both of those.
Great. Well, I did list all the books in the chat box a couple of times with links to both Valley Bookseller and Excelsior Bay Books. You're welcome to shop online, or you can go into either store, both open at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and booksellers will be on hand and ready to help you. And I just want to take a moment to let you know what we've got coming up. Next on Literature Lovers Night Out, we have an actual live author Friday night in Stillwater. We are proud to present Elizabeth Strout. Many of you will know her from her bestseller, Olive Kittredge. She's presenting her new novel, which is called Oh William, and tickets are available on the Valley Bookseller website. Please join us live and in person in Stillwater. It's going to be an amazing evening with Ms. Strout. And then on November 2nd, we're back virtually, and we're prepping for the holidays with 4 authors who have Christmas books coming. And it's going to be so much fun. What fun books to buy and stick in people's stockings, or do book on a bed. I love that. Sneak around on Christmas Eve and put a book on everyone's bed so everyone has something new to read when they go to sleep. Or if you've got little ones, it'll give them something to do before they wake you up on the holiday mornings. But we have lots of fun excitement going on. So please check the Literature Lovers Night Out website, the Valley Bookseller website, or the Excelsior Bay website, and see what's coming your way. Again, all the authors who graciously participated this evening have sent book plates to the store, so you can get a signed copy of all of their books. Our booksellers will be happy to make sure you get that. We can send them anywhere you like if you've got some gift shopping to do, or we can get them packed up and ready for you right at the store. So please do your shopping locally. Excelsior Bay Books, Valley Booksellers, shop local, support your brick and mortar bookstore so we can continue to bring you incredible events like this and incredible authors like we were so fortunate to feature tonight. Charlotte McConaghy coming to us from Australia, Leah Weiss coming to us from Virginia, all the way out west in Oregon, Tracy Lang, and Jessica Anya Blau in New York. They have asked me in the past, how do you get on Literature Lovers Nights Out? And the answer is, I have to like your book. And so I love all these women's books. And I was so thrilled when they all said yes and agreed to participate this fall in the program. So thank you for tuning in with us tonight. Thank you for being a loyal customer at both Valley Bookseller and Excelsior Bay. And we look forward to seeing you either on Zoom again or live and in person with Elizabeth Strout. Thank you, all of you ladies, for joining us and generously giving us your time. And Charlotte, especially as a new mother, I know you're busy, 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 but
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to go breastfeed now.
All right. Thank you, one and all. We appreciate it. Happy reading to you. Have a wonderful fall and a happy holiday season.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Pamela.
Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.
Good night. This program will
Bye.
be recorded and it will be ready to view tomorrow on both social media and on the websites. Thank you again. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.